Now, as our panel comes forward, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our dynamic moderator. Our moderator is Ms. Bonnie Carroll. She is the founder and chairman of the board, as well as the chief knowledge officer for Information International Associates, which is headquartered in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. She also serves as the president of the East Tennessee Economic Council, an independent regional and nonprofit membership organization dedicated to supporting the federal government's mission in Oak Ridge, as well as encouraging new opportunities to fully utilize the highly skilled talent, technologies, and unique capabilities that make up the federal reservation in Oak Ridge. Bonnie, I will turn it over to you at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah? Well, we have the second panel. The first one was the greatest mid-sized city in the United States, and now we have the greatest small city in the United States. I look forward to Huntsville tomorrow. Chattanooga, what a great talk we heard. We heard all about very entrepreneurial, commercial companies that have really made exciting contributions and opened exciting ideas to all of us. Oak Ridge is a very different city. Oak Ridge was called the Secret City, it was called the Science City, and now we see it's called the Energy City. It was founded in service to our country, and it continues to have the local, regional, national, and worldwide impacts and service. And because of this, we're actually looking in this panel at the impacts. A lot of you have heard the kinds of things these organizations have done because they're long-term organizations. They've been at many summits. But today we're going to really emphasize the impacts of these kinds of organizations. You heard about some of those before. So how are we going to do it? Well, we've got 4 great panelists. I'm going to switch the order just a little bit. First, we're going to have Matt Murray, because he's really going to give us a crosscut about the impacts of the Department of Energy, which is the major funder of the other organizations you're going to be hearing from. And Matt is the director of the UT Baker Center. Then we're going to hear from 3 organizations: Andy Page, the president and CEO of Oak Ridge Associated Universities, followed by Bill Rice, who's public affairs at Y-12 National Security Complex, and we'll end up with Matt Marston, who's the COO of URS CH2 M Hill Oak Ridge UCOR. Now, their biographies you can get on the app, but I want to give you a little bit of a word map of what these individuals, a little bit of their backgrounds. So I went through their backgrounds, and I'm giving you 3 concepts from each one. Matt, business and economic research, public policy economics. Andy, national security and emergency management, counterterrorism and homeland security. Bill, program management, national security, quality and performance assurance. And Matt Marsden, deactivation and decommissioning, project management, operating nuclear plants. So here's the background of these people. You'll hear some about these things, and then you'll hear some surprises, I think, in what they will be saying. So with that, Matt, tell us a little bit about impacts.
Thank you, Bonnie. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah, there we go. It's nice to be reduced to a few keywords, but they're very, very fitting keywords. Having said that, we are embarking, we being the Baker Center and the East Tennessee Economic Council with Jim Campbell, are embarking on the 9th economic impact study of DOE operations. The first study that we undertook, the University of Tennessee undertook, was back in 1998, and I participated in that study with another center that I'm affiliated with at UT. We are updating the study looking at data for fiscal year 2012 and 2013. Our general focus here is to try to capture what the broad economic benefits are to key stakeholders in Tennessee, for that matter around the region, around the country, arising from DOE operations within the East Tennessee Tennessee region. Very much like the economic impacts associated with a major manufacturing firm like Volkswagen, which is located right in the backyard of this community. Trying to identify what the jobs, the income, and so on are that are associated with DOE operations. DOE is the major driver injecting new dollars into the regional economy that are spent by DOE itself, but also creating economic impacts not just through the entities of RNL, Y12, and so on, but also more broadly. Those broader effects arise through the supply chain that backs up DOE-funded operations in Tennessee, and then the ripple effects of all of this spending, payroll spending, non-payroll spending, as it ripples through and across the Tennessee economy. It could affect sectors like retail trade, the local pharmacy, a local bank. So the effects initially very concentrated within the DOE operations, but then dissipated and then spread out across the state. So a broad set of economic impacts that we are trying to capture in this analysis, as we did in the previous studies that were undertaken to quantify the economic impacts of DOE. I have only for you today preliminary figures on the economic impacts. We have not vetted all of the numbers with the enterprises at DOE. We've got a lot of homework to do, but I'm fairly confident at this point at least that we're in ballpark of the kinds of estimates that we are looking for DOE. So big picture, these are aggregate impacts. We're not doing sub-state analysis. And again, these pertain to fiscal year 2012 and 2013. The total impact of all of the spending, inclusive of supplier firms and the ripple effects of the multiplier, right at about $3.5 billion of state gross domestic product. So we're capturing the benefits, aggregate benefits of DOE for the Tennessee statewide economy. That translates into about $2.2 billion in personal income, wages, salaries, rental income, dividend income, profit income for residents of the state of Tennessee. A lowball estimate, I'll say that, of about $85.5 million in state and local sales tax revenues coming from vendor sales, coming from payroll that then is expended on sales taxable goods and services in the state of Tennessee. Importantly, well over 40,000 jobs. So we're building on numbers that represent over 11,000 jobs within the broad DOE enterprise within East Tennessee. But through the ripple effects of the multiplier, the supply chain, and so on, we're looking at total employment impacts that tally over 40,000. And I think very importantly from a qualitative perspective, it's quantitative here, I'll give you a number, but you can think about the qualitative dimension of charitable contributions. We're looking at $12.2 million in charitable contributions. That's coming primarily from the corporate entities themselves. I know we're grossly understating the way in which the employees and many of the supply firms along that supply chain contribute to their local communities. So very significant numbers. They're impressive figures no matter how you slice the numbers, how you dice the numbers. They're very significant. They're below some of the peak numbers that we saw over the course of the last decade, but they're roughly in alignment with the figures for 2006 and the numbers dating back into the 1990s. Now, as important as those figures are, they are one very important facet of DOE's impacts on the local community. So some other dimensions of this that are very important, the skilled workforce. The skilled workforce, which is very important within our regional economy. Many of you know that the educational attainment of the Tennessee workforce lags the nation by a wide margin. So we're employing very high quality, high skilled employees at the broad DOE enterprise. We're also not fully capturing the impacts that arise from many of the firms that supply DOE enterprises or other firms in the supply chain with goods and services. Many of those companies are here primarily, if not exclusively, for DOE, but their entire portfolio of business is not confined to DOE. So they're here in part because of DOE, but they're also selling other goods and services within the regional economy to non-DOE enterprises. And so that broadens the economic impacts in a way that we really are not able to quantify. Dr. Mason mentioned some very other important ways, regardless of what that state policymaker said regarding medical isotopes. They're very, very important to America and its public health and the public health around the world. Bandit lights and the LED lights, another example of the kind of spillover benefits, spin-off benefits that we're not able to quantify doing our very, very standard economic impact analysis. So together, if you look at those hard numbers, that $3.5 billion in GDP, 2.2 million in personal income, over 40,000 jobs, those are huge impacts for our Tennessee economy, but they're just one part of the broader impacts bestowed by DOE, the enterprises, the workers on our regional economy. So I would ask that you keep your eyes and ears open. Sometime in the weeks ahead, we will be releasing our study, and we hope to get some significant press coverage, and hopefully this will help inform policymakers and others who have a very important stake in DOE activities in Tennessee.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Andy, Oak Ridge Associated Universities.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Dr. Mason did a great introduction to ORU. The fact that we also were born out of the Manhattan Project in 1946 and started with a small consortium of southeastern universities that have now gone to 114 PhD granting institutions across the country. We use that as a comprehensive engagement strategy with our universities, having a rich relationship with all the chief research officers there to back up and engage our missions to support DOE through science education. We support, of course, Oak Ridge National Laboratory as a strategic partner in their science education mission. But kind of going to the local, regional, and international impact, we also serve DOE in the areas of worker health, environment, and as you talked about in your construct of commonalities, national security, which we've done for some time. And therefore, ORU is known as a very rich, robust, and integrated performing contractor for DOE, serving in diverse missions around the world. Like Jim, I come from a Marine infantry officer background, serving in special operations expeditionary units, and I understand the nature and the privilege of leading people. I've got great employees like Rebecca Crow, who you met, but I have other employees with me here today. And the fact is that ORU integrated capabilities through all of those areas, science education, energy, health, and national security, provide a robust and integrated capability for DOE. And I'll just take the time to give you one specific example. Several years ago, many of you remember the nuclear power accident at Fukushima and the response that the United States had to make very suddenly to lend assistance to Japan and protect American citizens overseas. And they only had to come to one integrated contractor to get not only support to NNSA's nuclear incident team in terms of operational specialists that manned that team and produced products for the White House and the Secretary and the interagency regarding protective actions in Japan, but also had a 4 hours wheels up capability to deploy operation specialists to Japan with the consequence management assets of NNSA to protect American citizens overseas and advise the Japanese government on protective actions in and around that nuclear plant. They only had to come to ORU to get that integrated capability in 4 hours notice to be deployed to Japan. And I think that is just a prime example of how ORU is capable, agile, flexible, and ready to respond to the nation's needs, whether they're in science education, whether it's in environment, whether it's protecting DOE workers across the complex, whether it's working with UCOR on K-25 and K-27 on reducing the protected and contaminated areas around East Tennessee Technical Park, whether it's encouraging STEM education in K through 12 by sponsoring an extreme classroom makeover where we give $25,000 to a middle school or elementary school science teacher, whether it's our graduate students and interns that Dr. Mason talked about that's serving in over 224 research laboratories across the United States. So it's a very rich and diverse organization. Its core competencies remain science education, worker health, the environment, and national security. And I'm just very privileged and proud to be able to lead those fine young men and women who take part in this.
How many people have seen that classroom makeover film that they do? That is something special. We should show that one year. It shows how these elementary schools actually make bids to have a classroom makeover, and it shows the impact on the classroom and these kids. It's really an amazing experience. It just really gets you going and warms your heart.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Bonnie. I think our tagline, what we're known for, is we go further together. Teaming with you, partnering with you, we will take you further, and we will do it together. So thank you for that.
Okay, Bill, Y12.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. Good afternoon, everyone. So if you caught it on the video, Y12 celebrated its 70th anniversary last year, and we're pretty excited about that. And I'll bet even before Jim's presentation, probably everybody knew that our primary focus during that period of time was on building components for nuclear weapons. But I'll bet many of you don't know that we actually haven't built a new nuclear weapon in this country since 1992. But I think you all agree, and Jim just presented it, that this world is still a dangerous place. So our core mission remains to provide a safe, secure, and effective nuclear weapon stockpile. But Y12's role actually has gone beyond that now and includes global nuclear security, reducing the threat of nuclear proliferation and nuclear terrorism, and this is the one I want you to pay attention to, developing strategic partnerships with organizations like the ones you all represent to leverage our engineering, technology, manufacturing, and security expertise to enhance national security. Pretty big, important goal. And because of the expanded mission, our impact is now deeper and broader, not only globally and nationally, but regionally and locally. So I'm going to take just 2 minutes, a few more examples. And in Jim's presentation, he mentioned Y12 is the Department of Energy's Uranium Center of Excellence. So our uranium experts are working on some pretty cool things. For example, we're working with NASA to develop a kilowatt-class fissile power system for space. And we're working with the Bill Gates Foundation TerraPower project that's looking to develop a next-generation traveling wave nuclear reactor for commercial power generation. We operate a nuclear detection and sensor testing facility where we bring researchers from research groups from universities and national laboratories into Y12 to develop, test, and enhance their nuclear detection equipment that ultimately will be used to reduce the threat of nuclear proliferation and again strengthen national security. We also operate a global security training center that provides radiological and nuclear training solutions to a variety of civilian and federal customers. For example, we have an alarm response training course that teaches effective techniques for identifying and preventing the threat, the theft of nuclear materials, radiological materials. We've had over 3,000 folks from literally all over the country and all over the world go through that program. So that's how deep we reach out. And then finally, Mike Tuck was here a minute ago, and he's gone. But we are the National Prototyping Center, and actually have a responsibility to utilize our unique manufacturing and technical services resources to solve tough manufacturing problems and to produce first-of-a-kind, one-of-a-kind products, components in secure, classified facilities. For example, we actually built the prototype propulsors for the super quiet Seawolf submarine. We built the first 3 that are actually in operation today, and we're working with the Navy's propulsor facility now on the next generation. All of these projects require partnerships, and I think we'll talk more about that as we go through this panel. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, UCOR.
Thanks, Bonnie. Very different mission for UCOR. UCOR is DOE Environmental Management's cleanup contractor, and our primary mission is at ETTP. So UCOR and the predecessor companies have made a tremendous amount of progress to date. Over 80% of the facilities at the East Tennessee Technology Park, including K-25 now, where demolition completed in December, have been cleaned up. But the mission's not complete. Beyond the cleanup mission, which benefits health and safety of the environment and the personnel in the region, a secondary mission is reindustrialization. There's a very strong focus in making this brownfield cleanup project into land areas that are available for industry to redevelop. To date, there's already been a tremendous amount of work that's gone on there. Some statistics: over 700 acres of land and 14 buildings, over 300,000 square feet of facilities have been transitioned to private industry. 21 separate private companies currently conduct business on site. Another 400 acres that we're working to release over the next few years. So reindustrialization is the end game, if you will, for the cleanup mission at the site. But another thing that has happened along the way by DOE's investment in cleanup at the site is it's effectively spawned an industry based in Oak Ridge of technology and expertise that's related to the cleanup industry. Mentioned I do come from commercial nuclear power, and in cleaning up commercial nuclear reactors before I came to ETTP, we utilized the services of ORISE to do third-party evaluations of our cleanups so that we could get license released. So already the cleanup industry at Oak Ridge has regional, national, and global reach. Through our own companies, URS and CH2M Hill, we did bring a tremendous amount of talent to the site, but 95% of the resources that are used in cleanup are Oak Ridgers, people that were there when we showed up at the site. We manage an extremely talented and skilled workforce, has been said before, that's generations deep. So beyond what we offer at the site, we reach out. So another couple of facilities that have a history that's linked to uranium enrichment, Portsmouth in Ohio and Paducah in Kentucky, are more on the front end of the cleanup process. And there's a lot of outreach that has gone on between what we have done and the predecessor companies at ETTP to help both Portsmouth and Paducah advance their cause, technologies that we've shared with them. Interestingly, small business that's based in Oak Ridge continues to gain more of a foothold in gaining business at those other sites. So in talking about the economic impact to the area, it's not only the DOE investment in the Oak Ridge region that affects the Oak Ridge economy, it's the ability of those small businesses and small companies that have grown up there to reach out to these other facilities both regionally and internationally and bring income back to the hometown, if you will. So that's been a big part of what we do. I think we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I mentioned international reach. We continue to get a lot of interest from across the world in regions that are just entering into the cleanup industry in their countries, both from nuclear landfill, on-site landfill disposal cells, and decommissioning techniques in the UK and in Canada most recently, coming to the site to learn lessons from the work that we've done. And that develops more and more business opportunity, not only for our corporations that sponsor UCOR, but also for the businesses that support us at the site. So the reach that's associated with the work that we do for cleanup there extends far beyond the Oak Ridge community, but benefits the Oak Ridge community in a big way. I mentioned involvement of small businesses. One of the unique things I think about our contract is a tremendous commitment to subcontracting. We have a very large subcontract population, and that allows us to bring in technical experts and spread some of the investment around. We have over 70% of our spend on site is through subcontracts, and to date, 76% of that spend is small business, and much of that is local. So the reinvestment in the community continues, and we continue to look for new opportunities to do that, including ongoing procurements that we have. So we have a cleanup mission that ends somewhere around 2024 to finish ETTP. We're accelerating that date as much as we can and as much as Congressman Fleischman can get us funding for. Just thought I'd drop that little tidbit there just in case he's still in the crowd. But in any case, I think the reach that Oak Ridge now has with the Center of Excellence that I consider to be one of the greatest in the world for cleanup will continue. Another $8 billion worth of cleanup work to do just in Oak Ridge. So you can imagine what that looks like worldwide. So.
Thank you. Following on Tom Mason's theme about history, I came to Oak Ridge over 40 years ago. At that time, it was a one-company town, Union Carbide, a one-funder town, Department of Energy. And look at the diversity that has occurred in the last 40 years. It's absolutely incredible. And to the point where we were talking about the impact on the supply chain and what happens when you bring business in, my company, for one, we do less than 35% of our work DOE Oak Ridge. That's changing, and it will change yet again. But we do work for the Department of Defense and others and bring it to town. And I wonder, Matt, do you think you'll ever be able to calculate the kinds of impacts that just being the town with all the science, with all the capabilities, with the quality of life? I only came for 2 years when I began, but the quality of life really makes a difference in this region. Do you have any thoughts about a future study that might do that?
In principle, Bonnie, we could do that. It would actually, I think, be very, very interesting. I like Matt's comments about many of the firms that are supplying services in the region, because he clearly noted that many of them are only there in part to meet the needs of ETPP and the East Tennessee Technology Park and so on. There's a broader market. No company can have a single firm, or very few companies would want to have a single firm in their portfolio, so you need that diversity. Duly noted, the quality of life attributes of the region makes it an extremely attractive place to do business, and so if we can use those DOE dollars to be a primary pull, and then have the secondary pull of being quality of life, and then have those companies locate here, yeah, I think it's a huge part of the impact that we're missing. In principle, we could do it. It's just a question of who wants to pay for that particular study.
Well, that's
So Baker
a
Sonny
good
could do
question for the
anything,
corridor.
And be an interesting study to undertake.
It
really
is a
would
good
be.
question for the corridor. Now, we were only supposed to have 30 minutes for this panel. We have a little bit more time. I had some backup questions, but these guys answered them all. I had discussed them with it, so they've already answered them all. So I'm going to change it up a little bit here. We did have a final wrap-up theme, and that is, where do we go from here to increase the overall impacts? How do we leverage and facilitate leverage, or what can we do really as a corridor? I'm going to start with the panel and ask them what they think might come out of this. You know, we've had road trips between Chattanooga and Oak Ridge and things like that. So I'm going to ask the panelists, and I guess I'll start with Bill, because you already do a lot of work down the corridor. You've developed a relationship with Chattanooga. Can you tell us where we go from here? And then I'm opening it to the audience to add into this conversation. Okay, Bill?
Yeah, sure. I want to tell a little story. Can I tell a little story kind of
Absolutely.
relating to that? And this is more along the lines of how we work with University of Tennessee. I don't know, 2-3 years ago, the then president of Y-12, Darrell Cohorst, and the UT Knoxville Chancellor Jimmy Cheek got together and decided they wanted to work together. They wanted to form a partnership. They weren't exactly sure where that was going. They didn't have a particular plan. But pretty soon we had joint assignment agreements. We had graduate students working, UT graduate students working in our engineering organizations, and then all of a sudden UT graduate students working across all the divisions of Y-12. Then we started collaborating on proposals, and we actually started partnering on research projects. We partnered with the Baker Center, and we're an active role in the Institute of Nuclear Security. And now UT, Y-12, and the state are offering nuclear supplier forums to prepare the supplier base, the supply chain, for the big uranium processing facility. So the lesson for that is just get started. Even if you don't know where you're going, nurture the relationship, be open to opportunities for both parties, and maybe things will happen that you don't even realize.
Well, I have one. The Jump Fund. It's coming to Oak Ridge. I hear that there's going to be some discussion of having the Jump Fund in Oak Ridge as well. And that kind of connection between the entrepreneurial women in Oak Ridge and the entrepreneurial women in Chattanooga, you just do something and it starts some very interesting things. Anybody else? Andy?
Well, I think we've done, I think, a lot to partner with the entire TVC region. For example, just several years ago, the Kingston fly ash spill occurred with TVA. And TVA needed an independent, objective agency to come in and not only do the hazardous studies of what the fly ash had done to the Clinch River, but they also needed a public health campaign to help the citizens of Kingston, Tennessee. And we were able to integrate our capabilities of public health, health communications, and scientific assessment to kind of run that for the TVA. Every summer that you come to ORU and you see our classroom, it's filled with kids. And those kids come from 13 states across the entire Appalachian region, sponsored by the Appalachian Regional Council in collaboration with Oak Ridge National Laboratory to provide a scientific summer institute for middle school and high school kids. So, we're starting again at that age to try to get those kids interested in STEM education and in technology and move them forward. And I think that as all of us sit up here, we all have these type of overlapping capabilities that spill into each other's mission space, whether it's national security, whether it's protecting the environment, whether it's workforce development plans for the new uranium processing facility. You're going to need a workforce for that for the future. We all have these overlapping capabilities, and I would challenge the panel, and I would challenge the leadership in Oak Ridge to do more about leveraging what we can do together rather than kind of focus on our own missions. I mean, Jim had a very good example. The federal budgets are not what they used to be, and you have to bring more value to your work with the government. You have to show cost efficiency. You have to show partnerships. You have to show how you are giving more bang for the buck with less dollars out there. And it's only through partnering with each other that I think we're going to be able to achieve that and ensure that Oak Ridge continues its sustained growth that it's enjoyed over the last 40 years that you've talked about.
Anybody in the audience? Any thoughts? You've heard about Chattanooga and some of the things going on there. You've heard about some of the things in Oak Ridge. Where do we go to leverage these kind of capabilities across the corridor? Certainly we have some ideas.
Certainly there's one.
I think I would offer one other thought just to stimulate some conversation. I apologize. Dr. Mason mentioned the carbon fiber pilot plant. I think that's a huge growth opportunity not only for the Oak Ridge area, but also in supply chain and in feeding the automotive industry that's developed around here. We have 2 different solar facilities on site now and probably more coming. It's a two-way thing. I think redevelopment and reindustrialization at Oak Ridge is an opportunity for deployment of some of the technologies that are developed here in Chattanooga. And likewise, technologies that get developed and deployed in Oak Ridge can likewise be deployed here in Chattanooga through partnerships like that. So reindustrialization of our site also benefits this area by utilizing your technology and making new technology available to you. So to the extent that you have products, services, ideas that may be applicable to the work that we do in Oak Ridge, I would certainly encourage you to check out our supply chain opportunities like we would for you. And we're competitively bidding work all the time, and everybody in this room knows that the Department of Energy is encouraging us very heavily to do more in that area. So I would encourage you to seek out those opportunities because they're there.
Can you speak up a little bit, or we'll repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the short answer is I'd love to talk to you afterwards. We have the expertise, I think, to help with that.
Repeat the question.
The question is, are we working, are the uranium experts at Y-12 working with the Army Corps of Engineers or others at Huntsville for developing new fuels for reactors going forward in the future? And we are working, I mentioned earlier, with TerraPower and with Kilopower, and we do have the expertise to do that, and we're collaborating with Oak Ridge National Laboratory on some of those next generation fuel development projects. And that's probably all I want to say in this forum, but I'd love to talk to you afterwards.
Well, if small modular reactors is something you're interested in, we talk about that very frequently in the Oak Ridge area, so I'm sure there's conversation about that.
Plants, they're working in our labs. So if we think about our valley, and if we do that, we're going to increase the ability of our young people to want to continue to work in this Tennessee Valley. So that's something we can think about in the future as we move forward.
Do we have any final comments from anyone? We're just about out of time. If not, Matt, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to just further her point. I think that's definitely a focus area for the larger corporations that get involved with the work at these sites. I think have a ready avenue for, for example, some of the parent companies of UCOR. We have work in the UK and Germany and Canada and Japan, and I was thinking about this morning, and out of the people that came to Oak Ridge from those companies 2.5 years ago, I can think of a dozen of them now that are working both nationally and internationally, not only people that we brought to the site, but people that we inherited with the site that decided they wanted to pursue those opportunities. So I totally agree with you that those things are available out there, and we should work hard to leverage that capability.
So taking a thread from Brenda, it is true that meeting one another, knowing one another, shaking hands and talking is the first step to idea generation and cooperation. So with that, let's thank our speakers, and let's look forward to shaking hands.